going to go straight into Kobe right now. And I'm just going to start by saying that I think my kind of initial gut reaction was the exact same as every single person listening to this. It was Sunday afternoon. I went to the gym early. I think I'm going to get this great workout in, come home, watch UConn basketball. It's going to be a great day. UConn ends up losing in overtime to Tulsa. And, of course, what do? I do what every fan does, and I am a UConn fan for people who don't know. I went to UConn, graduated in 2007. And I do what I do. I go on social media, and I'm trying to see what everybody else is saying, and UConn loses another game, another close game, and this is such a big deal, and it's the biggest thing ever, and I'm so mad, and everybody's so mad. And it was wild because I saw kind of Kobe Bryant's name and picture kind of show up on my Twitter feed. And at the time, I frankly didn't think anything about it because if you've been paying attention to the news cycle, Kobe Bryant was in Philadelphia on Saturday night where LeBron James passed him on the all-time scoring list. And so, of course, Kobe was on my timeline because he was in the news a day ago, a day before his passing. And so it didn't even register with me that anything could be wrong. And I see his picture a second, third, fourth time. And I don't know who it was, but somebody tweeted something to the effect of this can't be real or something like that. And all of a sudden I look at the headline like I know all of you did. And it said TMZ, something to the effect of Kobe Bryant has passed away in a helicopter accident. And so, of course, my initial reaction is the same surface visceral reaction that we all did, which is like, no, that can't be right. TMZ's missed on stuff before. I mean, this is Kobe. This is Kobe. I'm not even a huge NBA fan, but Kobe is so much bigger than sports or being an NBA fan or a college basketball fan or I like baseball or I don't even care about basketball or I don't live in LA. I'm like, Kobe, no, that can't be right. And then you start thinking, well, if there's a helicopter crash, maybe he survived. And, and all of a sudden, well, there's no second source. And can we really trust TMZ, like I said? And then, of course, more information comes out. There's second, third, fourth news outlet. ESPN, Woj, of course. Woj is the final signature kind of stamp of news is when Woj says it is official. And you see that news, and it is official. And, I mean, it is, I think, for me, everything that it was for all of you, a punch in the gut, just a tragic, sad, really sad thing. And then, of course, the news that followed was that he, of course, was with his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. There were other people on this helicopter, and that there were no survivors. And so what I kind of want to do over the next couple minutes is kind of obviously talk about it, but frame it in a way. We have a lot of college kids that listen to this show, and I think if you're under a certain age, I don't think you realize who Kobe was and how much he meant to the game of basketball. And I'm telling you this as somebody that I'm not even a huge NBA guy, as you guys know. I'll talk NBA on this show once, maybe twice a year. I don't watch NBA regular season games. I don't care about, Mavs Wizards on a Tuesday night. Like, that's not who I am. But if you're too young to remember Kobe, what I would say is this. First off, he was an omnipresent thing in basketball that was almost bigger than the sport of basketball and the sport of the league of the NBA itself. And it sounds crazy, but what you have to understand with Kobe is a couple things. And I was thinking about this and watching the news and listening to the coverage, you kind of reflect on things. But Kobe kind of came into our consciousness as a high schooler. We realized, okay, this kid's going to go straight out of high school. It was kind of at this confluence of time when the internet is kind of becoming a thing. And I remember it was like TMZ before TMZ when Kobe Bryant, and anyone that's over about 35 will remember this, Kobe Bryant went to prom with Brandy. Brandy, you remember Brandy? You remember Brandy, the singer? He went to prom with Brandy, and he was kind of just, after that, he was like, okay, this kid's arrived. He just took the biggest singer in whatever. It'd be like somebody now taking, I don't know, Selena Gomez or somebody to prom. Like, this was a big deal. And so this happens. He comes to the NBA. By year 2, he's basically playing at an all-star level. And then from really like 1997 until like 3 years ago, he was you couldn't talk NBA without talking Kobe. Now, part of it was he played for the Los Angeles Lakers. Part of it was he's playing with Shaq, he's playing with Phil, whatever. But he was a rising star. He was the next Michael Jordan, and then he was a star. And then, as I just referenced, he had the big dust-up with Shaq and Phil. He wins a couple titles. Shaq gets traded. He kind of hits a downturn, and we're kind of wondering. And he's still, by the way, the biggest story. Other teams are winning championships, but it's still like, well, Kobe, now he can't win with Shaq. What does it mean? Gets Pau Gasol, wins a few more championships. Like so many athletes, obviously, down the stretch of his career, struggles with injuries. But even when he went out with 60. He was the Mamba. Like, this is what Kobe did. Of course Kobe's going to go out with 60 points on whatever it was, 40 shots or whatever. But I think what was so crazy about the news on Sunday was that because he was so much larger than life, because he was so much bigger than basketball, I don't think that any of us ever considered a world that he wasn't part of, right? The thing that what happened on Sunday was the thing that everybody does when anything sad happens, which is you start comparing it. Oh, well, this is the biggest tragedy since this, or that's the biggest tragedy since that. And what was so different about Kobe was that, it's not as though we had any reason to think this was going to happen, right? He hadn't been sick. He hadn't been in the hospital. Nothing serious had happened. He had no history with drugs and alcohol, nothing like that. He was just a dude that eats, slept, and breathed basketball, and then immediately went into coaching his daughters and being the omnipresent kind of person in their lives. And then he was just gone. And not only that, like I said, he was on our TVs on Saturday, 2 days ago, 48 hours ago, congratulating LeBron on this incredible achievement. And I just don't think that anyone, if you're of, like I said, the age of about 30, 32, 33 or older, I just don't think you ever considered the idea that Kobe wouldn't be around. And part of it is because of the way he played the game. Kobe was one of these guys, and I don't think there is a guy like this in the NBA now. But if you hated the Lakers, you also feared Kobe. You also felt like, dude, this guy, when he is on the court, the game is never over. I mean, we used to use the term, and it's so unfair to use today, but I'm just telling you, the term was used. You got to you got to put a stake in that guy, and you got to make sure he's done. Because I'll tell you, I used to watch games with my parents when I was a kid, and the team you'd be rooting for was up by 4 points with 8 seconds to go. And you say, well, if Kobe's on the floor, it's not over. If Kobe's on the floor, it's not done. That was the kind of player that he was. He was, I hate to use this term, so please forgive me. He was a killer on the court, and you had to put your foot on his throat and make sure he was done to be sure that the game was over. And so the idea that this guy wouldn't be around, I just don't think it ever crossed any of our minds. But like I said, he was bigger than the sport of basketball. And it's crazy because living in LA, I can tell you this, is that today, Sunday, was just an insane day. And I don't know what it was like in other parts of the country. I know everyone was shaken up. I literally had friends on the East Coast saying, dude, when I saw the news, I cried. I cried with my wife. I cried with my girlfriend. I cried with my mom. I cried with my dad, whatever. Because it was this kind of news to a certain generation of people. But in LA, it was even bigger. I mean, walking around on Sunday, it was like walking through a cemetery. I'm not kidding, and I'm not trying to over-exaggerate or be sarcastic or be funny. But, I mean, I went out for lunch, and we sat down at the bar, and the bartender said, yeah, people have been coming in all day just asking for a drink because it's a lot for people to process. And what I can tell you about LA is this. What I can tell you about Kobe, and in the context of what he meant to LA, is this, is that in LA, the Los Angeles Lakers are by far the biggest thing, right? I know some of you live in Kentucky, and the only thing that matters is Kentucky basketball. And I know some of you live in Tennessee, and the only thing that matters is the Tennessee Vols. Well, even in LA, with 2 professional basketball teams, 2 professional baseball teams, 2 major colleges, UCLA and USC, 2 NFL teams now, the Lakers are still by far the biggest thing. The Lakers are talked about 365 days a year on sports talk radio. After it's the Lakers way up here, And then kind of far down, it's the Dodgers and maybe the Rams and maybe USC football. And that's really it. Nobody talks Clippers. Nobody talks UCLA football. Nobody talks USC or UCLA basketball. It's Lakers, 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 Lakers. But Kobe was even bigger than that because for an entire generation, like I said, he was there from 96 to whatever it was, 2016. And this guy, like I'm telling you, I have friends that were like, dude, I feel like I grew up with him. Like, you know, for my generation, that's what we used to do. You got to remember, when he was with Shaq, there was no smartphones. There was no iPads. There was no nothing. What people in LA used to do, my wife just told me this story, is you used to get together with your family. Everybody would circle around the couch, and you'd watch Shaq and Kobe in the Lakers. And so for a certain segment of the population, this was, like, I don't want to say like Babe Ruth, whatever, but like for LA, this guy meant so much more than I can ever describe. And for him to be taken out of nowhere is just absolutely bananas to think about. It's just absolutely insane to think about. And I'm telling you, when I say this whole city is mourning right now, this whole city is mourning right now. And so what I would say is, like I said, he was an unbelievable basketball player, whether you liked the NBA, whether you didn't. I think we all kind of, as he got older, admired him. But what I really admired, and I think the part that hit a lot of us, because we all have families, we all have friends, we all have children or parents or whatever, was the fact that I think the last 2 or 3 years, we saw a different side of Kobe. And this was the part that hit me, and I did tweet it out, and I shared the tweet on my Instagram page and all this stuff. But listen, you know, there's better people to talk about the type of player he was and what he did great and what he didn't and what it was like to be in a locker room with him and all those things that go into talking about Kobe. But you know what impressed me as an outside observer over the last couple years is how he really, after the NBA, jumped into his role of being a parent. That, to me, was the coolest part. And it was really funny because I remember, I guess, again, nothing's funny on a day like today, but I remember, whatever it was, a year or two ago, he was on a podcast on Barstool Sports with Alex Rodriguez and one of the guys that works at Barstool. And basically, you know, they kind of asked him, they're like, come on, man, you must miss the NBA. Like, you're the Mamba, dude. We know you miss the NBA. And he's like, no, I really don't. He's like, dude, I gave it 100% for 20 years. And when I left that court for the last time, I knew I had left everything on the floor. And now I'm on to the next chapter. And the next chapter, to me, was cooler than the last chapter. I know I'm going to get corny and I know I'm going to get lame, whatever. So forgive me. But you watch over the last couple years, and what do you see? You see a guy that very clearly is invested in his children, is invested in being a father, is invested in working on being a husband. We all know that there was an issue early on in his marriage that's another conversation for another day. Not saying we shouldn't talk about it. I'm just saying that I don't know that today is the day to do it. But he really, over the last couple years, has really embraced being this father. And I live in LA, and that was the buzz around the community. He just loves coaching his daughter in basketball, and she has that same excitement for basketball that he does, and she has that same mentality that he does. And he just naturally just moved into that role away from basketball. And so I will say, for me, I just thought that was a cool side of Kobe that I wouldn't have known existed. And that, to me, not that my feelings matter on a day like today, but I think that was the part that I think hit us all, was this idea that, like, man, that guy was really trying hard to be the best dad that he could be for his now 4 daughters. He just had his 4th in June. He was doing everything he could to be the best dad for his kids. And again, that's the part that I think hits the hardest home, is the fact that, you know, this was a guy that for 20 years gave everything that he had to basketball. And you can Google the stories, but he'd get up at 3 a.m. to get a workout in because he needed to know that he was up when everybody else was sleeping. And then he'd take his kids to school, and then he'd go play in the NBA and do what an NBA guy does. But I bring that up because of the fact that it was so cool to see him transition out of that, to see him put all that energy into his family. And I will say, like, for me, and this is the part where it gets corny, I'm a guy, like I said, in my mid-30s. I'm thinking about, am I going to have a family? And part of the thing is like, dude, can I really be a good dad? Can I really be there for my kids? Am I really going to be able to do everything that I need to do to provide? And I know that a lot of people feel that exact same way in my age group. And so to see him embrace being a father, to see him embrace coaching his daughter, to see all those videos that popped up on social media on Sunday of him at games with his daughter and him at practice with his daughter and him working with moves in the court with his daughter, that was the part that is going to be his legacy to me. And obviously I'll think of him as a basketball player, but I really will, over these last couple years, think about him as a father, him as a coach, him as a kind of community leader. And I thought that was a very cool second act of his career. So again, I appreciate you guys indulging me for a minute here. And again, listen, I love doing this show. I love coming on Monday and talking about what happened in sports over the previous couple days, but it all feels trivial right now. We will get to it because it does matter to a lot of you. But obviously when we have a tragedy like this, I did feel like it was important to, of course, kind of talk about this off the top. And, and we'll move on to the other stuff. But just a really sad day. Obviously our thoughts are now, and I speak for everybody. I'm not just trying to speak for myself here, but our thoughts are with the families of all the victims, certainly Kobe's wife, his 3 remaining children, and it's just a very, very sad thing. So I appreciate you guys indulging me, and now let's get to what is the normal part of what I do on Mondays, which is recapping the weekend in college hoops.